It was opening night at the Narrowway Theatre. A delightful ballet show was about to begin. All the seats were full, and the audience waited with bated breath. The stage lit up, revealing a single dancer standing gracefully at its center. A beautiful symphony filled the air, and the ballerina began a mesmerizing solo performance. She waltzed, twirled, and soared across the stage, captivating everyone present. As the orchestra swelled to a climax, she started executing a sequence of flawless pirouettes without skipping a beat. She turned and turned like a spinning top as the music grew more intense, until suddenly a loud explosion echoed inside the theater, followed by another. The ballerina's spinning came to a halt. As the music continued, she placed her hand over her chest, where a small splotch of blood was beginning to spread. After which, she collapsed to the ground. Crew members rushed onto the stage in a panic. The spectators were frozen still, praying it was all part of the act, but it wasn't. Only a few minutes later, the ballerina passed away. Even after all the lights were turned on, the assailant was nowhere to be found. When the police arrived, they began their questioning. Several staff members outside the auditorium confirmed no one had left since the shots were fired. The spectators testified they were all seated when the shots rang out. Several audience members turned around, but nobody saw anyone suspicious that could have been the shooter. They also gave conflicting statements when asked where the sounds came from. As the theater was being searched, a staff member screamed they found something beneath one of the seats. The police looked under and found a gun, one with precisely 2 bullets fired. In the confused crowd, someone flashed a smirk. The murderer was among them, invisible. Can you solve it? The Last Dance. Ooh, this little theater is so cute. I know, right? Not too shabby if I say so myself. Yeah, it reminds me when we went to see Little Ladies. You should have been there, Bo. It was just like this. Oh yeah, I remember that. You weren't there, were you, buddy? Why not? It was girly stuff. Haha, no, but it was nice, right, baby? The choreography and everything, on point. Dad, you fell asleep. Good thing you were there to wake me up for the good bits. But you missed this funny part when... Anyway, Dad, was this a real murder? Yeah, it was, although it happened a long time ago. Okay, so if I solve it, does that count as solving a real murder? Hold your horses, Chief. You're getting ahead of yourself. Let's solve a couple hundred of these before we even think about that, alright? 200, alright, deal. And after that, you take me with you to a real crime scene. I wasn't... sure, why not? Investigation. Object. A ballet dancer was shot without anyone seeing the culprit. How was the crime perpetrated? Diorama. The diorama shows that what the theater looked like after the police investigation ended. Testimony. The ballet dancer was performing a series of difficult spins for her solo act. Testimony. Everyone heard 2 gunshots, after which the dancer fell to the ground. Testimony. Staff members were waiting on the wings. They rushed on the stage and confirmed she was dead. Testimony. Several members of the audience turned around, but nobody saw the shooter. Testimony. No one left until the investigation ended. Testimony. The police organized a search once they arrived. A gun was found beneath the seats. Fact. A bullet entered through the victim's chest, hit the heart, and remained in her body. Fact. A bullet was found in the wall. The lack of gunshot residue implies the shot was made from afar. Fact. The gun found in the auditorium fired the 2 bullets discovered at the crime scene. Okay, so what do we have here? Have the doors, speakers, the gun, seats, another speaker. A tutu, ballet, shoes, painting, a mirror. Anything behind the mirror? No. Some rope. Back door. Red curtains, black curtains. Palette, mirror. Ladder, another mirror. Some sandbags, another ladder. Painting. The victim, blood. Black curtains. Let me see. I want that in place. Because you see, this is too high. That doesn't seem like the shot could have come from here. But if the shot didn't came from the seats, what other options do we have? There were conflicting I'm thinking someone shot the gun first, before the act, and maybe recorded it. No, in fact, the second shot is just echo from the speakers. They shot once. But someone shot and hit the wall, and that's not the bullet inside the victim. Could someone from side have shot her? Feel like this is missing details. How did the killer shoot at the dancer without being seen? The line of fire goes too high over the seats, so it has to come from the stage. which means it happened. That bullet was fired beforehand. Second one, and that's to pretend that the shooter was in the gallery, when instead the shooter was in one of the wings. Maybe he hiding behind this mirror, or maybe in between the curtains. I'm gonna go with that. Any ideas, kiddos? I have observed the scene of the crime. It's a simple case, really. I don't know about Sherry, but I found the trick. Good. Now, the big problem here is that no one spotted the shooter. Everyone heard the gunshots, but no one saw anything suspicious. It's weird no matter how you slice it. Did you figure that out? Why wasn't the killer seen when they shot the dancer? Because of what they used to shoot? Because of where they shot from? They didn't shoot because of where they shot from. Where did the killer shoot from to avoid being seen? Seated outside the theater, on the left wing, on the right wing. I think on the right wing is more likely because of the mirror. Is there a way of knowing which of the wings would make more sense? I'll go with right wing. I think they could have been hiding on the sides. I don't think so, buddy. There were people there. There could be still. If the killer had pulled a gun and shot twice, someone would have noticed. Well, that's my theory went on. Let's try that again. I still think it's where they shot from. And it'd be outside the theater. That would make sense with the direction of the bullet. Sides the wall, below the stage. On the stage, on the left wing. Behind the curtains. Behind the curtains is better, in fact. Take a look at the path of the shot, gentlemen. We can see that it's like really high. The shooter would have needed to stand on their tiptoes to shoot like that. And that would look really silly, so they wouldn't have done that. I must admit at first I was quite puzzled by this, but then I had a revelation. You see, if we just look at things in reverse, killer shot from behind the curtains. Hey, I was going to say that. Dancer was spinning, so nobody could tell the real direction of the shot. That's actually why the killer fired at that time, to hide the location. Yeah, that. I was half correct there. I did say in between the curtains. Nice, good job. That's some good reasoning. But if you think about it, shooting from behind the curtains contradicts a few things at the crime scene. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, there is a bullet hole behind the curtains, That doesn't make sense if the shooter was there already. Anything else? The police found the gun below the seats. That's weird too. How did it get there? Exactly. Let's divide and conquer here. Starting with the gun. Like you said, Pumpkin, it was found beneath a seat. That would seem to suggest someone in the audience did it. But if what you're saying is right, and the shooter was on the stage when they fired, that begs the question. Why did no one notice the criminal placing the gun under the seats? Because of what they used to hide it? Because of when it was hidden? Because of who the criminal was? They didn't have time to do anything, according to the story, so it must mean that the criminal is in fact the one who found the gun. Police? Oh, what if it was a policeman, but like an evil one? Then nobody would have suspected them. Okay, but if that's the case, the evil officer would have needed to enter the theater twice, right? Once to kill the victim, then again with the rest of the police officers to hide the gun. How would they go unnoticed the first time? Because they weren't wearing police clothes that time. Sure, they could change their clothes, but they can't exactly change their face. Think about it, the killer sneaks onto the stage, kills the victim, then leaves. Anyone could have seen their face at any point. Showing up later hoping not to be recognized just because they're wearing a uniform would be pretty risky. Oh yeah, so there is a better answer. I am really messing this up. But they used to hide it. Could they have tied it or something? That seems unlikely. When it was hidden. Because of who the criminal was. I still feel like that makes more sense. Staff member. Spectator. Staff member. Oh, I see the truth clear as day now. Why wasn't the killer seen? It's quite elementary, really. Killer worked there. So nobody found it strange when they stepped off the stage and helped the police. Most foul. And then, while pretending to look under the seats, the criminal quietly slid the gun while people were looking the other way. And then falsely claimed they found it. Checkmate, evildoer, officers, arrest that man. Why are you pointing at me? Hold on, Sheriff. Now you're just jumping to conclusions. Oh, that's not it? No, it is. If the killer was a staff member, they would have had plenty of chances to dispose of the gun. But we can say for sure that the person who found it is the criminal, not yet anyway. That takes care of the gun issue, but there was another problem, the bullet behind the wall. Wait, why is that a problem? What do you mean? Like when the bad guy was hidden, they shot the girl, turned around and shot into the wall, right? No, the shot was fired from far away. Oh yeah, okay. Exactly. If the culprit was behind the curtains, then how did they shoot at the wall from afar? Because of when they shot. When did the killer shoot the wall? Before the show starts. Any ideas, Sherry Holmes? Patience, my dear Bowson. The mind is a complicated machine. Well, I don't know what's so complicated about it because I already know the answer. Really? I can give you a few more seconds if you want. Beep, time's up. Don't worry though, I'll explain it to you. It's true that the killer couldn't have shot the wall while they were hidden behind the curtains, but that doesn't mean they couldn't have done it at some other time. Some other time? If the criminal was a staff member, they had access to the theater whenever. All they had to do was come one day in secret and bang, shoot at the curtains. Nobody would have been able to notice a little hole left in there. Killer would even use tape or props to cover it up so nobody would find it. Not until the murder investigation, that is. That makes no sense, Bowson. It makes perfect sense. What do you mean? Because there were 2 gunshots. Says who? That's what this card says. See, everybody get heard 2 gunshots. Jerry's right, boss. But you're on the right track. You just need one more piece to complete this puzzle. So do you have an answer? Why did people hear 2 gunshots? Because of the speakers. Nobody in the audience could even agree on where the shots came from, because what people heard weren't actually gunshots. They were fake gunshots played by the speakers. The killer wanted to make everyone think the gun was fired twice, but they shot only once at the dancer. The bullet stuck in the wall was planted from the start. Oh, crazy, they did all that? Right on the money, Chief. You got it. Good job. What the heck? You're so smart, Bo. You figured it out. That's so cool. You think so? Yeah, I know. That's why you should listen to me more. I don't know, you say dumb stuff most of the time. But you're the one who does that. I don't, though. Alright, let's take it from the top. As you deduce, the criminal was stagehand at the theater. He had been romantically involved with the victim, but she left him for another guy. A very ugly breakup. The guy was pretty sick in the head, so in a fit of jealousy, he decided to commit the ultimate sin, murder. But since he was an obvious suspect, he had to find a way to make it so he had a strong alibi, hence the trick. The plan was to shoot her on the opening night of her show and make it seem like one of the spectators did it. First thing he did was plant a bullet hole a week before the show while nobody was around. That was also his first mistake. He didn't realize the shooting angle would be awkward for someone in the crowd. Second thing he did was offering to take care of the sound system. He used that to add 2 gunshots to the melody of the victim's performance at very specific timings. Then, the night of the show came. He slipped behind the curtains and waited in darkness for his chance. If he shot from there, it would be obvious where the bullet came from. That's why he chose to shoot while the victim was spinning around. He knew the choreography, so he knew exactly what he was waiting for. As the first gunshot echoed from the speakers, he fired a single shot right to her chest. The gun was muffled with a silencer, so the only sound people heard was from the speakers. Silencers don't work that way. Immediately after that, the second gunshot rang out inside the theater, but this time the criminal didn't fire. The investigation would later match this second gunshot to the bullet in the wall, a missed shot. This would be proof of the culprit being someone in the auditorium. After being shot, the dancer fell dead to the ground. While everyone's focus was on her, the killer came out of hiding and played the fool. And at last, once he had chance, he disposed of the weapon below the seats, only to shout that he had just found it. I knew it. The plan wasn't half bad, but the inspectors in charge of the case back then were pretty sharp. There was evidence of the culprit tampering with the music, and there were ties connecting him to the gun. It was over. He went through all those hoops, but in the end, crime never pays. They're amazing. In the end, crime never pays, yeah. No criminal can hide from Sherry Holmes and her trusty sidekick Bowson. Hold on, why am I Watson? I should obviously be Sherlock. Sorry, Bo, I'm Sherry. Sherry, Sherlock, Sherry, that's me. Sherlock's the guy. You don't have a hat. You need to have a hat to be Sherlock. Fine, give me yours then. No, this is mine, get your own. I solved the case. Come on, hand it over. Bo, no, don't. I'll kick you. Stop. No, Dad. Hey, you two, don't run down the stairs. Whoa, knock it off. Be nice to your sister. Yes, those two. And that is curtains down for the last dance, the second case in Little Locked Rooms. You can find a link to the Steam page for Little Locked Rooms down in the description of the video, as usual. And while you're down there, why don't you leave a comment and let me know if you did solve the case? Next week, we will deal with the third case in Little Locked Rooms, in which a Rapunzel-like scenario plays out, with a murderer disappearing from a tower with no exits. I hope to see you here then, in William Ware Games Corner.